Are we ready?
I would like to thank Captain Carter for fixing the clock instead of 8:30 and all by herself fixing the system. Amazing.
She has
Took charge.
so many skills. So many skills.
That is one of the most profound statements I've seen of anyone who's going to enter the board the next day. I will have to make sure that it gets quoted.
Can we get that in the minutes?
Yes, we'll put that in the minutes. Okay, thank you.
Public comment before the meeting starts.
Okay. All righty, I think we're all ready. Yes. I'd like to welcome everyone to the regular scheduled board meeting of the Montara Water Sewer District. And if we could have a call to order, please.
Okay.
Yes.
Director Slater-Carter?
Present.
Director Boyd?
Here.
Director Wilson?
Here.
Director Harvey?
Here.
Director Hubert?
Here.
Thank you. Now, I know we have a little recognition later on today. However, I'd like to take advantage of the President's statement to do a couple things tonight. One is I really want to thank the community for allowing me the opportunity to be here for 5 years. I want to thank, Scott and I were just chatting here about what we've learned about each other over the last 5 years. I would have to say that when I first entered the board, probably the trust factors amongst the group was at a reasonably low ebb. And I think what's been really good about this group is I think we've really role modeled on how, one, to work effectively together, and two, to be able to express differences in a way that we can be proud that we were able to listen to each other. And I think this board has done really well with that. The second thing I want to say is I really feel good about the management of the Montara Water Sewer District. I think Clemens and the staff we have here and the support that the board has given to the employees has been admirable. And I think it positions this group really, really well. And my only other passing comment as the new 2 board members, and you get the opportunity for 4 more years, Jen, congratulations, is just understand what it's like to be a small entity in the world of sharks. I manage a small agency in a nonprofit healthcare world, and one of the things I always have to concern myself with is where the big players are playing and not get yourself into a period of what I would call arrogance. So this is a real jewel. I think there's a lot of opportunities here, and there's a fair amount of threats. And as long as we're able to balance that in the way that the board can work effectively as management, I think there's a good future for the district. So with that, is there any oral comments not on the agenda? I believe I have one. Greg, I think that's yours.
Well, I'm told I'm allowed to talk about 2 things. Great EAs.
As long as you keep it short.
Yeah. So the first thing is to follow up on the fire preparedness. Clemens and I have added around some emails. You may recall at the last board meeting, I asked a bunch of questions. I was told I was going to get a written reply. I don't see it on the agenda, okay? There's always the next meeting, which looks like it might be January, but still. One of the things, Clemens, you said was about our insurance rates were kind of tacit secondary evidence that we weren't that cheap. Well, if you've been following what's going on in next door Montara, there's a super long thread now of all these people who lost their insurance for fire, and their rates have gone up. So it's not clear that that statement still holds water. But, you know, I look forward to a reply. This topic isn't going away. You know, do we have enough water in a drought year, in a dry month? And Clemens, you know, may already have the answers, but I think.
Okay, so I'll take care of that. In full disclosure, I think the reason we postponed this to January is because the engineer who wanted to be here to answer the questions is not here. And to have this discussion to be fully useful for everyone, her expertise was required. And so therefore, it will be agendized for the January meeting.
Thank you. Next topic.
Okay.
The brewery. The brewery, I haven't seen a reliable estimate. 3 million gallons, is that a year? You know?
Brewery.
The brewery that's going to be approved down near, what is it, the Wave Project?
No, Big Wave.
Big Wave, okay, so there's a brewery application pending, and I just want to ask governance questions. Where's the analysis that shows what the impact on Montara water and sewer is? Presumably we would make a little money if we have the water. What happens if it's a drought year? Do we still have to, keep delivering water to the brewery? Do homeowners have to cut back because of the brewery? And then there's the issues for SAM, and I know we're only a quarter of the SAM institution, but as directors, normally breweries would have pretreatment plants. Those pretreatments have to be monitored. There has to be an automatic cutoff. There's issues of the capital expenditure that SAM would have to make to handle the volume. Where's the analysis? I would really like to see both from Montara's district and through our membership at SAM, what the analysis is, who's responsible for doing what, who's responsible for enforcing it, and who's responsible for restitution if something goes wrong.
Are you talking about?
The brewery.
You're talking about Big Wave?
They're going up, there's a, what do you call it? Filing, asking permit to approve a brewery. You're not aware of it?
Jim, what happened was it came to us and it was initially going to have offices.
Yeah.
And
no.
now it's, the brewery from over in Princeton
It's
is
moving
moving.
over.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
maybe the board members here who sit on SAM can already talk about this, but I think we're all very interested in seeing what the implications of that brewery load on our water and sewer systems are. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay.
I think, Clemens, for a future agenda item, it would be very interesting to have the proponents of the brewery come and speak to us.
So according to Big Wave, the brewery has pulled out and there's no attempt to move into
Oh,
any of those spaces. So
Oh.
I'm aware of what you're talking about.
And also, the sewer is not covered by the sewer for the Big Wave is not in our district, it's in Granada.
yes.
So we're not involved with the sewer.
Okay, great. I did see the permit applications. I didn't know that they withdrawn their funds.
All right, let's move forward. I believe that's the only blue slip I have for items that are not on the agenda. The next item we have is the consent agenda, and let me read that, please. There are 10 items. One is to approve the minutes for November 1, 2018. Two is to approve the financial statements for October 2018. Three is to approve the warrants for December 1, 2018. Four is the SAM flow report for October. 5, the month review current investment portfolio. 6, the connection permit application received. 7 is the monthly water production report for October 2018. 8, which is now worth reading, is the rain report. 9 is the solar energy report. And 10 is the monthly public agency retirement service report for September 2018. Are there any items that any of you wish to remove from the consent agenda? Hearing none.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, first, we have one item for old business, and that is review and possible action concerning the consideration of in-house sewer collection services. Clemens, you're on.
Yeah, thank you, Dwight. I see mostly familiar faces. I think most everybody was here at the last time, so let me summarize this just very briefly what we're talking about. So far, the sewer authority on the coast side has contracts with each individual member agency, or have for the past 40 years contracts with the individual member agencies to maintain their collection systems. Now the city of Half Moon Bay engaged in a separate contract with the sewer authority mid-coast side, significantly reducing their services. Around 50% of their services that they've gotten so far, they now outsourced to a company called Mark Thomas. They also announced that this will be continued and that they will not purchase any services from the sewer authority coast side going forward. So all of a sudden, from the joint 3-member agency cost-sharing approach, we are down with 2-member agencies left at SAM. We have since quite some time, since 2015, considered to bring these services in-house for a number of reasons. And we think that this is now an ideal time simply because the three-member agency cost-sharing approach does not provide the same efficiency as before. Sewer authority on the coast side is, or let me say this way, coast side cleaning crew, whoever provides it, needs to have a minimum amount of staff to provide emergency services, et cetera, et cetera. That's why sewer authority on the coast side, if Montara and Granada remain with SAM, would not necessarily be able to reduce cost, lay off staff. So with that, that means that now the additional, that you have to divide the number by 2 instead of 3, so it's going to be more expensive for Montara. Additionally, we see some efficiencies. We have field staff, water staff available, and we see some efficiencies, for example, when it comes to underground service alerts. These are markings that are done for the water side as well as for the sewer side. It's currently 2 separate operators going out marking lines. We've seen efficiencies, for example, in emergency response, on call, et cetera, et cetera. So with that, we see some, we see the cost for the sewer authority coast side increasing significantly. We just implemented a 23% rate increase on the sewer side. We announced and got approved a further 20% increase to the sewer rates. And we know that we're only halfway after that 2-year steps of increase. We will have to reconsider, but the estimates is that we're only, that we need to do 2 more years of similar rate increases to bring the sewer rates to a level that can be sustained. That's due to increased capital needs at the sewer authority mid-coast side, and also the increased operations and maintenance budget that went up very significantly over the past 3 years. So we brought this item up at the last board meeting and presented an analysis and recommendation from our sewer engineer, who laid out a transition plan to bring sewer staff in-house. To say what we're of course also very concerned is the existing staff at the sewer authority coast side. We fully understand that there's a potential impact, and we also understand what they bring, what the value of the existing staff is. So we definitely would like to avoid any impact to, we don't want to lose any knowledge that that currently exists. So with that said, we brought this recommendation and analysis to the board last time. There was requested further financial analysis that we now asked Bartle Wells to do, and that was specifically a look at the suggested contract from the sewer authority on the coast side, and also looking and comparing that with our approach of bringing the sewer staff in-house. And with that, I would like to give Alex actually a chance to really say much more intelligently what I'm just trying to put together here. So if we can actually turn on the projector and start the slideshow.
I mean, some people have to move.
Yeah, I'll move.
Didn't bring any popcorn. It was a trust fund.
Okay, so Sure.
Well, nice to see everybody, and I think what Clemens kind of covered some of what I was going to say. I'll just maybe start churning through this on the next slide. Just to give the quick background, as Clemens noted, the Sewer Authority Mid-Coast side provides treatment for the whole region. There's economies of scale there, having a single treatment plant. All the member agencies have their own collection systems, and for economies of scale, it didn't make sense to have three separate collections providers. So for the last 20, 25 years, SAM, Sewer Authority Mid-Coast side, has provided the collection services for the regional benefit.
40 years.
40 years, okay. For a long time. And everything has worked well over that time. However, we understand Half Moon Bay is not maybe content with the way things are going and has been looking to transition away from SAM for their own local collection system, which kind of throws the whole regional economy of scale that you're getting with one provider for all three agencies a little out of whack. And as Clemens mentioned, that's going to leave all the costs to be funded by the Granada Community Services District and Montara Water and Sanitary District. On the next slide, this is, as Clemens also mentioned, that this is not new, that you've been looking at potential in-house service for your own sewer collection system. But I think what has happened, my understanding is with Half Moon Bay pulling out half this year and fully pulling out by the next fiscal year, which is only about 6-7 months away, that there's a little bit more urgency to evaluate if there are benefits to bringing this service in-house. As Clemens mentioned, you already have the capacity to do this. You're already providing similar services for your water system. And that, as new engineering is also identified, there may be a number of operational benefits that can benefit both your water and sewer if you were to bring these services in-house. On the next slide, that leads to where we come in. I think the thoughts were, it looks like there's some positives for bringing it in-house, but doesn't make financial sense. And the real honesty I can tell you there is, the numbers we're providing here are not a be-all and end-all. There are many unknowns on all sides of the equation here, but we try to make a good faith effort based on the preliminary information we had to compare what are the costs of bringing these services in-house versus continuing with SAM to provide collection services to this district. Our analysis is based on different assumptions. On one hand of the equation, we did not use SAM's new proposal to the district, which was based on cost per linear foot, based on some conversations with them. That was the only reason they put it in the cost per linear foot is because that was the way it was requested in the RFP. It didn't seem to make sense to do it that way because there's a lot of fixed costs that they incur. And no matter how you slice and dice it, Beverly from Sewer Authority Mid-Coast had indicated that the costs are going to remain the same. So there's a lot that doesn't make sense for those costs per linear foot the way we understand it. But what we did compare with, SAM, Sewer Authority Mid-Coast side, had prepared a kind of a 3-year budget projection of what it would cost to provide the same level of service they currently have, assuming the phase-out of Half Moon Bay. So that's what we used on one hand of the equation, understanding those are just estimates. On the other hand of the equation, there are some cost estimates we developed with some input from Newton Engineering, from Pippin, also talking with Clemens, who has done some research in the region as well, what it costs to provide these services. So we tried to come up with a good faith estimate on both sides of the coin. And the third thing I want to mention about our analysis, it's a small service area. It certainly doesn't make sense to have 3 separate individual service providers. So what it comes down to is, does it make sense to have a sewer collection service overseen by SAM or by Montara for serving both Montara and Granada Community Services District? So we assumed in the case where Montara would take on these services, that Granada would come along for the ride as well and would contract services to Montara instead of the current arrangement of contracting with SAM. So it's the same level of services coming from one or the other agency. And we did not assume a future third option, which is what I just learned today, is if Montara was to take on these services, if that Half Moon Bay would be open again to having Montara serve as a single regional provider, or maybe a JPA for all three member agencies. So that's something we didn't analyze. And really my take is the numbers are very preliminary at this stage, but the indication is that in addition to whatever operating benefits are out there, it looked like there could be some financial benefits to transition to in-house service. Obviously up front, there's a little bit higher level of costs for staff, staffing up, training, transitioning the SCADA, the electronic communication system, making sure you have the right vehicles and stuff. I will point out some of those costs can be amortized over time. When most agencies buy a Vector truck, they don't pay cash, they typically lease it for 10 years. That's what we assumed in our assumptions. But it looked like after that initial bump up in costs, that there would be future cost savings in future years. And on top of that, we're not even factoring in potential ancillary benefits that could incur to your water system. For example, that was pointed out to me, there could be a single emergency response crew for Montara's water and sewer systems, as opposed to having two separate emergency response teams available, one for water and one for sewer. So I'm not an expert in the engineering side, so Pippin is here from New Engineering to talk about that. But on the financing side, we did try to make a good faith apples to apples comparison based on imperfect information on all sides on the next slide. And what it looked like was on the top section, for in-house collection services, we assumed there'd be obviously 3 new full-time equivalent staff members, a supervisor, and 2 additional operators. There'd be costs for vehicles and equipment, some of which would be amortized over 10 years if the district had to purchase a Vector truck. And there'd be obviously other expenses, professional services, utilities, etc. What we did not include as new operating costs from Montara, which I assumed there would be, but I'm being told they're not. I assumed that if SAM was to relinquish its collection system services, that over at the Sewer Authority Mid-Coast side, there are some costs they may be incurring for management or for some shared staff, that if they weren't doing collections, they would still be funding anyway, so it would roll over to their wastewater treatment plant side, of which Montara would be responsible for 20%. But what I've been told so far is, the preliminary analysis is that from SAM's perspective, is there is no overlap in costs, so we excluded those. At the same token, we assumed there would be some revenue offsets, as I mentioned, that we assumed it wouldn't make sense to have 3 separate ones. We assumed Granada, which take on contracting with Montara for these services if Montara was to take them in-house at a rate I included here is a little bit less than what the contract would be if they were paying SAM under SAM's projections. So trying to be a little on the conservative side. And we assume that Half Moon Bay has been in, I think, in discussions with Montara that there, some emergency services they could potentially like to have Montara provide due to the locality of the staff in this area. We did not include any intertie cleaning costs. SAM has an intertie pipeline that also needs to be serviced, and we did not assume that if Montara took on the collection services that they would also be providing those services for SAM. So again, there's some unknowns there. On the other side of the equation, what did we assume for continuing with SAM? We did not assume with this new proposal that they came up with, which again was in response to an RFP and had some peculiarities about it that I don't think would be normally put together if you were really working with SAM on a new contract. But we took SAM's costs at their own projections that they've made as the comparison. We assume 4% future cost escalation, and Montara's already funding a little bit of cost on its sewer side, so we assume those would still be part of the equation. So at the bottom, what's the difference in yellow? Yeah, there's a little bit of upfront costs. It looks, $168,000. This is just kind of a guess at this stage. But in the future, we're showing there'll be cost savings, and this doesn't include potential benefits for some of these operating benefits that haven't been quantified, or the potential benefits to the water side in terms of maybe reduced costs for emergency service crew if that could be split with the sewer side. So I hope I haven't completely confused everyone with this. Move on to the next slide. So our basic findings, it's really difficult to quantify with a lot of precision at this stage what the costs and benefits would be from one side or to the other. but based on a preliminary good faith effort, it looked like there could be some cost savings achieved if you did take this in-house. Additional benefits potentially to the water system, and as I mentioned, even additional benefits on a regional basis for all the agencies if Montara took on these collection services. It would kind of open the door for renegotiation on a full region-wide basis to have a single crew covering the entire region instead of two separate collection system crews, which is the new reality on a temporary basis since Half Moon Bay is going away to a private operator. So our take was, things look good from a preliminary analysis perspective. We didn't see any reason from a financial perspective why you wouldn't consider pursuing the option of taking sewer collection systems in-house, but with the understanding that there is additional analysis to be done, and I think additional outreach and conversations with the other JPA member agencies with SAM. And we'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Alex. I just want to real briefly go into actually what it is that we're asking for.
I'm gonna turn the,
Yes. And so ultimately, we would like to continue with the assessment of this and prepare a draft collections budget that we would bring back hopefully to the January 17 meeting. With that process, we would also look at the new memo one more time and prepare draft requests for proposals for the services that we would need for the, during the transition time. And with that, depending if the sewer authority on the coast side submits a proposal for this, going forward, at one point, we also need to start negotiating the remaining services with SAM as well.
okay, so I know we got a speaker on this, so hang tight for just a second. So I want to make sure I understand what the request is. Basically, what you're requesting is the continuing due diligence.
Yes,
And-
bringing a budget, bringing a draft RFP that lays out the services that we want outsourced for the transition plan.
So essentially, you're asking for approval for a plan of action, which you'll bring back to the board for approval.
Yes.
Okay. With that in mind, I have Tim Costello, who wanted to speak to this.
Hello, my name is Tim Costello. I'm the operations supervisor in Sanitary. In Half Moon Bay, Beverly Marshall, the general manager of the sewer authority, couldn't be here this evening. She is at a conference down here today. But there were just a few points of clarification that we wanted to bring up. So,
Go for it.
without further ado, one thing I wanted to point out historically, back, if you go back, Half Moon Bay actually had their own, they used to do their own in-house collection services in-house, and Montara predominantly contracted out with a different agency. This goes back probably 37 years, I think, before, the formation of JPA, they contracted it in-house. So, just thought I'd throw that out there, just copy on page 1 of the staff report, no new agreement had been reached. So the manager, Clemens, has not responded to discuss the new contract that was sent out in April of this past year. So there hasn't been any movement on that, so I can't talk to everything on this list, like I said. I'm speaking on that. Page 2 of the staff report. New contract does not provide a solution to the labor issues. Labor issues, I'm assuming, meaning that we don't have enough staffing, but in the staff report that I believe Bartles put together and renewed, it says 3 people. Currently, we have 3 people in the collections department. The staffing issue being the 4th person that we would have for Half Moon Bay if Half Moon Bay did in fact decide not to terminate. But since We don't know what Half Moon Bay is going to do. We haven't filled that fourth position, so currently we have 3 positions, which is the same number of positions that you're looking at hiring. So I just want to clarify that the number of human bodies out there, same. Page 2, reduced scope of services, SSO response. Again, a new contract has not been discussed with the SAM manager. The proposal made by the SAM manager included no reduction of services unless requested by either MWSD or GCSD. Just a bit of clarification is all that is. Page 8 or page 6 of the Board of Wells report. Additional cost estimate was I kind of missed it when you did your PowerPoint there. The $25,000 to $30,000 a year additional cost, I just wasn't really sure why those costs would not be the same for Montara, assuming they were just pass-through costs. I would think anywhere from $25,000 to $30,000 would be. If Sam incurred those costs, we would just pass them through. If Sam wasn't there, Montara would incur those costs also. You don't have to respond. It's cool. What else? One concern you might have is cross-contamination. If you have single response crews working on both sides, sewer and wastewater, obviously there has to be a firewall. You can't use the same tools. You really shouldn't have the same clothing. Everything needs to be pretty well separated. The last thing that you want as a water department is to send out a boiler in place. That would be that risk to have to send out for sure. Just we'll put that out there. So, if you factor in the vacant position that will not be filled this year, that would clearly impact the incremental cost savings on page 6 of the Board of Wells report. Analysis, if you remove the additional cost estimates that were added to SAM, the $26,000 to $30,000, whatever it was that was added to SAM, also on page 6, it would reduce the number even further to, I think it's basically a net. It's a wash or less than that. It really is. Unless there's other underlying reasons why for some reason All right. I think a good first step would for your MWSD manager to have a real conversation with the SAM manager to address these concerns, some of these concerns I've laid out here, to address some of these concerns and have a open and transparent dialogue about a service contract. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, comments from the board.
There's no other comments from the,
I have no other blue stuff, so,
good.
okay.
I'll start, if I may. I have been asking for a new contract with SAM for several years now. I think a 35-year-old contract is an open-ended contract, leaves too much to interpretation, and that we should be talking about about what we can do with a new contract. And I noticed a lot of the items that were outlined or stated in the staff report could actually be put into a new contract. And what I don't see here is an understatement of the risks to MWSD. And Tim Costello brought up one, and that's just the issue of potential cross-contamination, or even concern about cross-contamination. When people are concerned about something, it can turn in, perception can turn into a perceived reality, and then you spend a lot of time trying to fight that fire. I am particularly concerned about this because of the lawsuit. We don't know what the costs of the lawsuit are going to be. upon the resolution of the lawsuit, not to mention in the process of the lawsuit. But it appears that our costs for SAM are going to go up $85,000 over 2 years. And yet, we're being asked to spend $750,000 over 2 years. So there's a huge difference. How are we going to pay for this? I have more questions, but I'd love to hear the comments from the rest of the board. But my concern is that we need to be looking at making a good contract. This is something I think we could look at later, maybe. I was shocked to hear that we were talking about contracting with Half Moon Bay to perform services for them at the, strategic plan workshop on Saturday, and I recommend everybody watch it on TV. There were several things that came up. One is that the Half Moon Bay representatives on SAM, both were quite firm in their statements that they wanted to see a single sewer agency on the coast. They wanted SAM dissolved and a single sewer agency. So when Alex mentioned that, I think it puts us at risk, and I'm very concerned about that. The other is, in talking about costs, that the city manager did mention, we were having a discussion about the Princeton pump station, which needs to be replaced. And that's going to be a SAM operations cost. So it's not going to be mitigated by us taking over our own collection system cleaning. He said that Half Moon Bay should be involved in any planning of the Princeton pump station improvements, but they weren't going to be paying for anything. And I'm paraphrasing that. But that was the intent of the statement was, well, you guys get to do that for SAM, that's on your side of the border. And if that comes to be, we're going to have some huge costs. Princeton Pump Station is a huge OSHA and operational nightmare right now, and we need to replace it. So I see that these costs are only going to be going up, and to at 4% a year, given the lack of maintenance and repair and the tight budget that Sam has been working under, it's let a lot of things go that need to be brought up to date. And I think 4% a year is probably fairly reasonable since inflation's at about 2%. And 4% a year isn't necessarily forever. So I would like to hold off on doing anything about this until we have more knowledge of what's going on with the lawsuit.
Scott?
With Half Moon Bay's decision to pull out, they've put Sam in a very bad spot, basically destabilizing and putting at risk the entire cleaning operation, because the way it's been structured has been funded by 3 agencies, cut down to 2, and it fundamentally alters the economics. Right now is the right time for us to be considering what our options are. If we just wait, we narrow our options. So right now is a good time to look and see what it looks like. So I'm glad that we're starting to get some numbers and some pictures. I haven't had the time to read the engineer's report. I think that's where I'm going to be looking for a lot of the critical factors. On the cross-contamination, I'm just going to push back, Tim, and say we have certified operators. They understand these risks. It's fine to mention it, but just just like Sam has certified operators who understand that side of the business, we have water operators, water operators on the potable water side who likewise they understand contamination. So it's a fine risk, but I think both teams are amply qualified to do their thing. If there's cross training, I think it only serves to possibly improve that. As far as Half Moon Bay, I was there on Saturday. I heard some comments. Let's leave it at that. I think in terms of the numbers that we saw tonight, it's a nominal contribution for providing emergency response services. Honestly, it has been long-standing policy for most every agency on the coast side to offer some kind of mutual aid response capability to other agencies, and generally without establishing any kind of financial arrangement ahead of time. For emergency call-out stuff, that's a service for hire. If we've got it and it's a reasonable service and they want it, I say, I'm perfectly willing to look at what's a fair rate if they want it as a purchaser of a service. Fine. I don't know what they'd be up for given how they're positioned, and I would hope that a $30,000 amount wouldn't be material to really any kind of decision we make on this point. I think if we have the service and we can offer it to neighboring agencies, fine. I think the more interesting conversation is going to be with Granada, if we were to partner up on this. And I think one of the things that we got to look into and have a really clear view on is what happens with the IPS cleaning, because that doesn't go away. Sam still has that responsibility, and we wouldn't be picking that up. So that does affect a different SAM budget, but it uses a lot of the same people and equipment. So I think we need to look into that and have a really clear understanding of how much net savings is there in that understanding that there's two sets of responsibilities there. So I'm glad we're looking at it. I like taking these problems apart and seeing what we can do. And I think I know that I've talked with some crew members, and I've talked with Clemens, and I know there's a lot of respect from Montara for the job that Sam does for us. And I've been vocal at the SAM meetings to express Montara's gratitude for the way that the cleaning, the collections team has been working to help us out. It's been on an upward track for the past few years. I've said it at SAM a number of times. I want to be sure to say it tonight. And I think in looking at this, we care a lot about the people who live and work on the coast side, and especially the ones we work very closely with. So anything that we do has got to take all of that into account and make sure that at the end of the day, we're serving the whole community well.
Yeah.
In looking at this, it just seems to me very obvious that the reason Half Moon Bay does not trust Sam, so they went their own way. We're basically saying the same thing. We don't trust Sam, so we won't go our own way. And that's sort of what we're really talking about here. Okay, the other question that I have is the need to recuse, okay? Because we're talking about a collection agreement, okay, that going forth, we're hampered in the ability to even vote on it. And this, I'm directing this to you, Dave, is that Jim can't vote on it because his son is an employee of Sam in the collections, right? So he'd have to recuse himself.
Oh, on the SAM level.
Yeah.
I'm talking about SAM.
Yeah.
But regardless, just stay focused on the conversation.
Okay. Then the other one going forward is that how can a new board member who's the spouse of the general manager of SAM be able to vote on anything related to the sewer because of the fact that his spouse is the general manager of SAM, so there's an obvious conflict of interest there.
Anything else?
That's enough.
Okay. Jim?
Okay, a couple of things. I have always, I've been the alternate at SAM meetings, and I've recused myself in talking about the staff or compensation for SAM employees. So I've sat here in closed sessions on this board and open sessions, talked about SAM in general, but I've recused myself on the SAM board, talking about anything, about employees, benefits, or compensation or anything else. So that's been taken care of on my part. As far as the collection staff, I recused myself from discussing their status.
So that, you're saying that in the future you'd be able to vote on this because there would be no conflict of interest?
I'm gonna do a call of order on this one.
Thank you.
Hang tight.
I don't know. We can discuss that.
Jim, hang tight. I mean, I'm gonna ask that I wanna keep the discussion based on the subject at hand. There have been discussions offline about recusal, and I have confidence that both individuals know what that means. And I think I wanna we need to keep that discussion tonight is, do we give the manager the authority to do due process to explore the options? And that's what we're talking about, so let's stay focused on
And
that.
I have a suggestion, let's just send a letter to the Attorney General's office and get a final.
Well,
State level.
we talked last night on how to manage that, so, but that's an offline discussion, and we can handle that differently.
Okay, just having heard Bill's comments, can I go ahead and
Yes.
discuss on this board this issue?
Yes, you can.
I mean,
So
am I allowed to do this,
Yes,
Dave?
you are, go ahead.
Okay. I assume I am.
Yes, because we're talking about, really, what the subject at hand right now is the value to the district,
Okay.
and that's what the discussion is.
Right, so, I'm not familiar with, the, options, that Catherine and Scott mentioned about working in a partnership with GSD or, working in that, talking with them. I'm not familiar with that at this point. That hasn't been discussed on this board as far as I know. And Catherine, I have a question for you. Does Half Moon, you mentioned that Half Moon Bay talked, I wasn't there, I didn't listen to the Saturday workshop. So Half Moon Bay is talking about the possibility of forming a new sewer agency to take care of all the SAM responsibilities, collections and treatment. I don't know nothing.
There was not that much discussion, Jim.
Okay.
There were several comments, and they were made by the Half Moon Bay reps, and they were that they wanted to see SAM dissolve and create a new special district for sewer for the whole coast side.
Okay.
And they didn't talk about doing any services, but I'm assuming if SAM were dissolved and MWSD suddenly became Montara Water and not Montara Sanitary, SAM would be picking up all of the parts.
Okay.
Or, well, whatever the new agency would be called.
Okay. Would that, I mean, I have to ask one more question. Would that, is Half Moon Bay talking about, if that new agency were formed, would they be talking about taking the responsibility of the IPS?
It would have to, is my assumption, because SAM would no longer exist. Something would have to take care of the IPS and the sewer plant, which is what SAM's primary job, its mission is. So, there's a lot to be discussed. It would have to go through LAFCO, there would have to be lots of reports. And, so they were simply sentences, there was no plan.
Okay, there's no plan, it was just a comment made by one of the.
By both,
By both, okay.
by both.
Okay, so we'll be hearing more about this, I assume, in the near future at this meeting, possibly. And then, the other comment I want to make is that We, at the last meeting, the board agreed that having our own collection agency is an option that we want to keep intact. It's an option. We didn't decide to take any action, but, and it continues to be an option. Regardless of the lawsuit, or maybe as a result of the lawsuit, we want to keep that option going. And I think that's what, that's the direction that we're going to be giving today too, is that it's an option that we just, we have to have.
So,
Right.
yes, I see no harm in giving Clemens the authority to proceed with this. This is not approval of action, this is approval to do due diligence. And I see no downside. I also don't see any downside having discussion with Sam on the contract either.
Thank you.
And I would like to expand, as part of the due diligence, vet the process that we've done tonight and have a discussion with Sam and have both of the information coming back to the board, so when this new board comes together, we'll have all the information. So I would like to recommend that we go ahead and approve the recommendation that Clemens set forth, and in addition, at least have a conversation with Sam as to what that contract could potentially offer. And I am going to present that as a motion.
Mr. Chairman, with respect to the point raised by Director Peter, I was not aware that Director Torres' son was employed by Sam. Is that true? He is employed?
Yes.
Is he employed, does his work entail collection services work?
Yeah, only collection service.
Pardon me? Only?
Yeah.
The test for whether or not there's a conflict, whether or not the decision that would be made here would have a reasonably material effect on the source of income for Director Harvey or his immediate family.
Yeah, so this action is only to explore, and there is no action as to essentially
So
sell
the
it.
problem becomes a little bit more complex than that, because participation in reaching a decision, even though a decision may not be made, may give rise to a conflict.
All right, so make this clean. Jim, I'm going to recommend, why don't you recuse yourself of this vote, and that will just clean out the action, and then we can. So, again, I'm going to move that we give Clemens the authority to proceed, and also enter into discussions with Sam. Is there a second?
I'd like to add,
Listen,
I'd like to see an RFP to a third party,
what do you mean RFP?
a request for proposal.
What I would recommend is let him do the exploratory part. Remember, we're not taking action tonight.
I understand that, but what I'm saying is, as long as we're exploring, let's explore all the options, which would be Sam, us, and a private company like we had doing it before.
Okay, so let's expand, look at options of an RFP as part of the proposal. Because we have a second.
That
By
has
the
a-
way,
that has a-
I agree with that idea.
Dave?
If we're gonna do due diligence, we need to explore the private
Yeah,
option
no, I
also.
think that's fine.
So, putting on an RFP generally, especially on something we don't do on a regular basis, comparison of cost, I take that as a second.
Yeah.
So-
Okay, so I wanted to go into the discussion. I did want to say, just one quick thought to amplify the point that you raised, that I think any of this investigation that we do informs any discussion that we have with Sam about what we might want in a contract. I am going to mention about the contract that was, the contract draft that was sent out earlier in the year. It was sent out kind of just as a, was sent out without any real discussion up front. Typically, this kind of thing, you want to sit down if you're going to propose a change in the contract. A good way to do that is sit down at the same table and hammer out a basic term sheet, and then a draft of the contract is really a good idea at that point. Sending out the draft without the discussion is very often, in all the contract negotiations I've ever done, it's usually a non-starter. Because people really need to get on the same page about the general agreement before you get down to the details. So I saw that go out. I, as a SAM board member, was surprised to see it go out. And it shouldn't have been a surprise to me. The notion that, and that came after Montara had already said, this year, we don't need a change in the contract because we're operating well. We have a lot of trust in Sam and the crew to get the job done right. Let's save that for a time when we've got less on our plate, because this year with the lawsuit and other things, it's just been a very full year. So I'm very interested in getting people at the table and talking. I think this exploration of, okay, what would it take if we were to do it ourselves, informs what do we really want from Sam, so we can compare apples to apples. So, a lot of words to say. I think it's good to do both. I am a little concerned about putting out an RFP for two reasons, so I want to query staff. Cost and time to prepare, and where does that fit in our workload right now?
So, let me just, first, a little active listening that I understand what the direction is. It's following staff recommendation, plus the addition of an RFP that actually considers a private vendor. With that, I think I'm happy to do that. We are going to prepare those in the draft form. We're not going to send those out and bring them to the next meeting. We went into this a little bit at the last meeting. Why we actually didn't recommend this route is simply because we are very much convinced that a sewer crew needs to be located on this side of the hill. We need to retain local existing knowledge at SAM. And that is a path that wouldn't provide that model. We definitely think that for emergency response purposes, we need to have folks that live in the community.
So when you draft your,
So we'll draft it.
when you draft an RFP, you can put in stipulations as to what is required, correct?
Yes, and what we're also gonna try to do with that is actually, the city is going through this process right now and learning what this means to work with the private party. So we'll actually have a discussion with city staff and see if we can learn something from them that we can share.
So I think what we're saying, is approve the exploration as requested by staff. Enter into a discussion with Sam about potential contract opportunities, and then draft a draft RFP, which will be brought back to the next board meeting. Am I hearing that correctly?
And I would like to see the discussions with Sam move away from the artificial dollars per linear foot, which was what Half Moon Bay had
Yeah.
requested.
Yeah, that was,
And it makes no sense. I want to see everything very clear, itemized by cost by task, so that we can have clear spreadsheet comparisons.
I agree wholeheartedly with that. Their required presentation of the data, we asked, we didn't get a good understanding of why it was asked for that way, but it doesn't help us understand where the money's spent.
That's correct.
The bottom dollar line, sure, that matters, but, anybody can take how many feet you have in your system and do the division, but that doesn't, but then you also need to consider your pumps, and you gotta consider your hotspots, and you gotta consider
Okay, so we're.
all that stuff, so.
And Half Moon Bay was
Vigorous
unaware
agreement.
of any of its own hotspots, so it was easy to go to a linear foot. But so yeah, I want to see an itemized by cost and by itemized by cost and by task.
Okay, so I think we got consensus there. I'm gonna take a roll call vote on this.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
before I proceed, I'm seriously concerned that the board may not be taking into consideration the seriousness or the legal consequences of proceeding with Director Harvey's participation.
I'm going to recuse myself.
I'm recommending that we let Dave talk and don't interrupt, please.
Okay. This is very serious. both for Director Harvey and for the district itself. There are two main areas of potential legal consequences where there's a conflict. One is the Fair Political Practices Act, and the other is Government Code Section 1090, which involves contract conflicts. With respect to the latter, an action that is taken regarding the contract when there's a conflict is simply illegal. It simply voids the contract. There is no action in contemplation of law. So Director Harvey doesn't have a conflict by virtue of his son's employment with Sam, particularly employment in the collections section. It seems to me, unless you have facts to the contrary, that a decision by this district to terminate the contract with Sam, which is implied by the action before you, that the termination of a contract would be tainted by the conflict involving Director Harvey. It's not a fault situation. I'm not making in terms of criticism. I'm concerned about the legal consequences. And the consequence is potential civil and criminal liability of Director Harvey, and also avoidance of the action taken with respect to the contract. So my recommendation is that Director Harvey, if the facts are that one, his son works for Sam, particularly in the collections section, it appears to me that the action taken may well affect his income, which in turn, in the face or in contemplation of law, affects the immediate family of Director Harvey. And when that happens, in the context of conflict, that gives rise to conflict. It's not Director Harvey being involved with that contract or losing a job or the potential income, but his son, in doing so, relates to his income, which under the law is attributed to Director Harvey, whether he gets it or not.
Okay,
It's
Dave.
considered part of
Dave,
it.
No. I'm going to take call of order. Clemens, you need to back down, please. Now, this group, this board has to make a decision today.
Correct.
Okay, so what I need from you in straight English was, what are you recommending?
Recusing,
Okay,
Director
now
Harvey recused himself from this decision.
Okay, he has already said he's going to recuse himself from the
Well, he's
decision.
participated, we're gonna have to avoid that.
Okay, but,
Well, okay, do you want me to,
Yes, I
I'm gonna
recommend.
recuse myself. Do you want me to leave the
I
room?
recommend it.
Do you want me to leave the board?
No.
Should I,
No,
should I
not
go
to-
off the
Well,
board?
I would recommend that you
Should I,
leave the
should I,
room.
should
Just
I
leave the room.
resign from the board?
Just simply
leave the
declare,
room. Leave the room.
Okay.
declare the potential. It's not a personal matter. It's
That's fine. I wanna do what's right.
Okay,
That's fine.
all right. So with that in mind,
So, Dave, to understand, there's a motion and a second. Do we need to start
Proceed.
over on that?
You proceed.
Okay.
okay, and I'm still going to take a roll call vote.
Okay, Director Slater-Carter,
Yes.
Director Boyd,
Yes.
Director Wilson.
Yes.
Director Hoover.
I just want to clarify, what exactly are we voting on?
So, my understanding is that, that we're voting on moving forward with the staff recommendation. Do you understand the staff recommendation?
Oh, no.
Plus,
Yeah, that's what we said. Go ahead.
plus, the preparation of an RFP
That's the
that
right.
considers the services, and I'm assuming we're talking about the full services being provided by a third-party vendor.
And,
And the sitting down and talking with Sam.
And sitting down and talking with them about the contract cost.
Right.
no, what, and actually sitting down and having discussion about a potential enhancement of the contract.
Yeah, it was, go ahead and start moving down that path, because we're gonna need, one way or other, we're gonna need the options, right?
Yes, and that is in the staff recommendation
I
already.
cannot approve the staff recommendation because it's quite clear that we're cutting services with Sam in the wording with it. And this was supposed to be investigation, not giving an announcement to Sam. When
The-
it says, let me finish.
What the motion made was,
But Clemens said we are approving the recommendation made by staff.
well, if the
So-
recitation is incorrect, let's just
Thank you,
correct the
Bill.
recitation. And the recitation was, proceed with the investigation, talk with Sam about the contract, and prepare a draft RFP. That's what I understand the motion to be, is that
Exactly.
you made the motion,
That's my motion.
and you seconded the motion. Did I state that fairly?
That's why I want to clarify to make
Okay.
sure. That is my understanding. There's three parts to it.
Yes.
One is that a good faith negotiation with Sam, an RFP that is the same for Sam as it is for a private vendor. Because a request for a proposal has to be one document.
But remember, it's gonna be a draft RFP
Yeah.
for,
Okay.
okay.
Right.
And then the other one is that a more detailed analysis is if we bring it in-house.
Correct.
So it is not the staff recommendation, it is a completely different motion.
That's fine. I mean, I think we're saying, what's been stated just now is what we're approving.
The staff investigation.
The staff
You've laid the groundwork for understanding these things, and you want to take it to the next level of getting more
Right.
information.
I want to take it to the next level by coming forward with the preparation of a draft budget. This would be the further analysis.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we just got to be careful with our terms, but I think we're actually on the same page on this. So,
Okay, I'm gonna repeat the roll call vote to make sure we're all clear on it. I think we're clear on the motion, so why don't you do it one more time, please?
Director Carter, Slater Carter,
With the clarification, yes.
Director Boyd,
yes.
Director Wilson.
Yes.
Director Kiefer.
Yes.
Okay, passes 4-0. I'm sorry?
Do I need to say something about Director Harvey?
Yes, let the record show that Director Harvey has recused himself with respect to this agenda item and has absented himself from the room.
Thank
Okay,
you.
and with that in mind, let's invite
It's not
him
everybody
back
gets
into
to
the room, please. Okay. Phew. All right, we're on to new business, and this one is review and possible action concerning approval of the cell leasing negotiating contract with Communication Leasing Services. So wait for Clemens to come back.
Thank you, Alex.
All right, Clemens, you're on about the cell phone tower lease
Okay,
negotiations.
all right. Off to some more exciting topics. So we have,
Loftier, at least.
we have currently 2 towers out here that we're actually getting a little bit of revenue off from cell companies that have their equipment mounted here. We have also the garages that we're renting out with that emergency generator as well. So there's some equipment on site that we've, and that for quite some time, at least 15 years, I believe, the first one or so since quite some time. This is a very valuable site. We have also additional sites that have potential. We have some tanks that we actually already have equipment that allows the mounting of antennas. We designed the tanks accordingly. Cell companies usually don't negotiate this by themselves. They have this armada of other sub-companies that really, quite frankly, bombard us with requests all the time. This is a rather complicated field. We're also seeing changes made to the existing equipment. That on the current agreement we simply approve or don't approve, depending on the circumstances. But what we're really lacking is knowledge in the industry, and it is rather exceptional to find someone who is representing actually the property owner's interest in these negotiations. We believe that it's about time that we actually engage with a consultant that can help us negotiate future contracts. None of the existing contracts is up immediately. They're all running for a number of years still. But again, we're approached by cell companies, for example, now about the schoolhouse site for potential. And there's on top of that, there's additional vendors that approach us here and there with some similar equipment. And so we were actually approached recently by a marine communication system company that wanted to put some equipment out here. We're still in negotiations with that company. That was a smaller contract where we actually engaged with Aaron Levinson from, what's the company name? Communication Leasings. And so we have now a little work history with Aaron. What we're doing there hasn't bear any fruit yet, and we're not sure if that's going to be the case on that small negotiation. But we would like to, we're asking the board to approve a contract tonight that allows essentially staff to work close together with Aaron on all of these questions. And that also allows Aaron to negotiate better rates. There is, of course, going to be a portion of what he negotiates that is going to his company. But when we're looking around and we're comparing what other similar sites on the coast side are getting in revenue, I think we can really benefit from someone with industry knowledge, and we would like to recommend to the board to authorize me to sign the agreement.
How much is the contract for?
It's a percentage of the revenue.
And that percentage is how much?
20%.
20%. Yeah, no, I just want to make sure we're clear on what we're voting.
So a couple questions. So Clemens, with that 20%, would we still come out, would we still be coming out ahead, do you feel?
Yes,
We'd still be coming out ahead
yes.
on our contracts. And then the other question is, do we have antenna on tanks now?
Not yet.
Okay, I would like, if we do go with this contractor, or in any case, there are a lot of us in Montara.
Like that better reception?
I was gonna say the same thing.
A lot of us in Montara who don't get terrible reception from both Verizon or AT&T. And I've talked to AT&T, they said that they have a antenna on top of the mountain, they have one here, but we still don't get service, we're being charged these high rates. So could you, or the contractor, or both, make sure that we do get antenna put in? Part of the deal is that they be charged and paid for having an extra antenna on tanks and so forth, so that we do get, so the people in the district get good reception. I've got to get in my car, go down to the post office to get my messages, unless I stand out 3 houses down with my hand up in the air and stand on my hands and one hand up in the air. So maybe we could just make sure that, because we have a landline, a lot of people don't have landlines and they depend upon the cell service. So can we focus on that need?
Well, that's a good request. I think, Jim, of course, the revenue for the district is our main negotiation factor, but
Okay.
I think we can definitely mention to the companies that
Well,
we have other sites that are available and that the community would benefit from
Yeah,
better
we
service.
actually had in a round of negotiation a few years back, we actually had them talking about panels on the tank, on the old tank, up on the hill. And it didn't make, that whole round of negotiation, I think, didn't go anywhere, but we've had people interested, and that could shoot down into the, the area around Cedar that you're talking about, where my AT&T drops off to no bars. I know what you're talking about.
And we do have Aaron here tonight, so I mean, I'm assuming he could tell us what the response would be.
Or maybe, maybe we could, AT&T could pay for extra antenna to handle this. We could end up making more money by charging them for extra antenna.
Here's the challenge, if I could. So, all of the carriers, AT&T included, for them, it's strictly where are the phones? Where's the population base? The reason you don't get coverage, unfortunately, is because there are not many people here. And these carriers go where the people are, and they care nothing about, I shouldn't say they care nothing about smaller communities, but smaller communities are not their focus. Their focus is larger communities. So, with that being said, I would try my best to take that into account. And certainly if AT&T is interested in a site in one location, I would certainly try to get them to expand on that one location and place other equipment nearby. But it's a challenge, just simply because of the economics for them the economics for them are not as advantageous as, adding sites in a more populated area.
The interest that we had with the equipment that's currently mounted with the different vendors the different carriers that we're dealing with was all about providing continuity down Highway 1. And so that to them was their primary focus. And getting into the neighborhoods was, they didn't care.
If you have an iPhone, Jim, you can put it on Wi-Fi, and it will then pick up all of your messages, and you can use your phone on Wi-Fi at home.
I don't have an iPhone, I have an Android.
Android works.
Same thing, Jim. Same thing.
Same thing then.
Yeah, my Androids actually have Wi-Fi.
It's an ecumenical room, so we're fine.
Yeah, even though we got a conflict of interest on that discussion. So,
Did I say iPhone?
No, I said iPhone.
one last question for you. What do you anticipate the revenue generation in addition to what we have now? Do you have any guesses?
That's a really hard thing to estimate. I'd rather, under promise and over deliver. So it's very, it's hard to give you an estimate with any accuracy. I think that, the fact that AT&T is interested in a site is a good thing. But, we're a long ways from making a deal. And there's a lot that goes into a contract that protects the water district. And so it's really a hard thing for me to estimate off the top of my head. I mean, I think that though there is some possibility, given that 5G is coming around, and it tends to go, the latest iterations of the technology tend to go to the less populated areas last, unfortunately. But, 5G is coming, and that will present some additional revenue opportunities and coverage opportunities.
That's fine, go ahead.
Can I just ask a technical question? You've been involved in these contracts before. Is there any, are there ever situations where some of the equipment can be shared between the emergency and the cell phone company, where I'm thinking particularly in terms of emergency power? Have there ever been agreements where emergency power could be sized to power their equipment, plus perhaps a secondary transfer switch to additional equipment owned by the...
Emergency power is one of the few areas where that is possible. In terms of the actual equipment, the antennas.
Just, I was thinking in terms of generator and emergency.
Yeah, it's a possibility. It's something that would need to be negotiated.
potentially something that could benefit the district.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Any other comments on the request? It's a modest request, it seems.
Well, has Dave reviewed this?
Yes.
He has. And I'm looking at, the fees, and, there are some fees that we end up paying upfront.
There shouldn't be.
No, that's a lump sum if it's below a certain threshold.
Okay,
And that's based on, that would be based on revenue generated, and it would be a lump sum fee, yeah.
and what is the
Below-
term of this contract?
It's a 1-year term with a 2-year option,
Okay,
with 30-day termination rights for
okay,
both parties.
okay. I move that we adopt this.
Second, please.
I'll second it. I do have a question. I mean, you've seen what we have already negotiated and have, already on the contract, right? Or do you have an idea?
A little bit, not, I haven't really studied it so
Well,
much.
let me ask it another way. In your practice, I mean, what kind of factors go into giving you the leverage to really strike a better deal than an agency like this? I'm sure you bring expertise, and I'm sure you have,
No, it's a fair question.
it's not a challenge, it's more a curiosity.
I think the essential, so just to, I'll try to be brief. I used to work for the Southern Pacific Railroad. That's when I first got involved in negotiating longitudinal easements with fiber companies.
Yeah.
Some of the first cell sites with Bay Area Cellular that became Cell One, that became AT&T Wireless. And then after that, hired on with AT&T Wireless and was in charge of their site acquisition leasing for their first data network. In that position, my goal was to acquire sites as cheaply as possible with the most advantageous terms for AT&T. And that went well at the time. Because a lot of property owners, they would see whatever, 300 or 500 a month, and go, oh my God, for my roof? Take the whole roof, which was a terrible thing. But it happened. So at the end of that process, AT&T wanted me to move up to Canada. They were doing a joint venture with ClearNet at the time. I was about to get married. My wife's a San Francisco girl. We were not, we weren't gonna move, and she didn't want me gone for 3 or 4 months at a time. So that was the end of that. Then I started interviewing with these different companies, and I could have probably gone to any of them, Sprint at the time, or GTE at the time, now Verizon. But I decided, having experienced what I did at AT&T and dealing with very sophisticated property owners who were doing terrible deals, I thought, someone like me is needed by property owners. The carriers don't, sure they could benefit from having me, but property owners need me. And so in 1997, I started working for carriers. I think the main, I guess if I boiled everything down, the main thing I bring to the table is just having worked for AT&T and doing a lot of co-location agreements while at AT&T with all the carriers, and just knowing how they operate, knowing what their economics are, knowing what they'd be willing to pay, it is a huge advantage for any property owner.
All right.
So,
Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Right.
Opposed? Thank you very much. We expect a 100% increase in our revenue.
We'll try.
Make it right.
Scott, where did this go?
Comments.
The comments.
Okay. Next new business item is review the fiscal year 2017-18.
Chair, did you introduce a resolution here to approve this agreement?
Yes.
Oh, no, we did a voice vote.
We did a voice vote, let's do a roll call.
We should have a roll call.
All right, roll call, please.
Okay. Director Slater Carter,
Aye.
Director Boyd,
Aye.
Director Wilson,
Aye.
Director Harvey,
Aye.
Director Revere.
Aye.
Should be a minimum for roll call votes for budget purposes, but that's an editorial. Okay, number 2, review the fiscal year and 2017-18 budget to
Right, thanks,
action.
Mike. So, since we received the audit at the last meeting, we have actually some real numbers that we can look at and see how we did last fiscal year. And I would like to ask, Peter to come up and tell us what he sees in the year-end finance review. And, we're just gonna focus on the main numbers, I think, and if there's questions on the smaller stuff, have at it, but, we're focusing on the big stuff right now.
Correct. As Clinton said, yes, now that we have the audit, once again, at our last meeting, the presentation by VTD of our clean audit for fiscal year 17-18, I like to do a comparison to really, the finance committee works really hard on the budget during February, March, and April, and it's interesting then to look back to see how we did after all the audit adjustments and all the closing entries have been posted. Because theoretically, you said you guys have management financial information review on a monthly basis. But those don't actually tell the entire story because the way that it operates is it is more or less on a cash basis for a number of accounts. So we can look at it, but there's always a timing difference that's involved, whereas with the audit, we make all those accruals, and so we get to a place where we have the solid numbers, and then from there, being able to once again apply the budget and just see how well we did, and this also aids us in the upcoming 1920 budget process to just once again, okay, well, this is historically we've been wrong on a certain count, or yes, we've been right on a certain counts, and you just really gauge performance. So with that, you have the Excel piece in front of you as well as the executive summary. We can go into individual accounts, but as Clement said, I'll hit the impact items. He said the way it runs out, sewer first. So sewer service charges, we had over budget of over $50,000 due to a number of reasons. Typically, we hit this one right on, but through additional connections, delinquencies, we received more money than we anticipated. Not necessarily a bad thing, but we're looking to find out why. The other piece was property tax. Once again, this is the ERAF piece. We historically have not budgeted for it. Now, beginning with fiscal year 18-19, we have begun budgeting for a portion of what we anticipate perhaps receiving for ERAF. So going on, expenditure-wise, personnel, I said a little bit over, mainly because at the beginning of the fiscal year, we had 2 district clerks with the transition process, and then once Judy had left, there was a large payout of all of her constant absences, so that would be the big one there. The big blip is, of course, professional services, which you guys all, for the most part, know why. A lot of it is just due to legal. Other than that, the SAM expense went up as was not necessarily anticipated. We typically receive the SAM budget, and we go from there. The current year, we had a major budget revision, and that is shown in the numbers as well. Outside of that, if you really just drop down to the bottom line, well, the connection fee, that was important. One more than anticipated, so we close to hit that one. So, the bottom line, at the beginning of the fiscal year for our budget, we had anticipated going into reserves of $1.5 million close to. It didn't end up happening. It was more like $463,000 going into reserves, mainly because of the capital projects did not come off as we anticipated them for last year. So that is really the main reason why we did not go into budget or go into reserve as much as we had anticipated. Those projects are now, for the most part, ongoing. So the next page after that shows a 2-year comparison. It is always kind of neat to look at, year-to-year actuals. What's what are the big differences? And so if you have any questions there, you can ask away. But pages 3 through 5 are the detailed accounts. In the very back, I have the roll-ups, so if you have individual questions on individual accounts, I'd be happy to have them, and I may be able to answer them. I hope I'll be able to answer them. If I can't, I'll get back to you guys. But from there, going right into water on page 6, I like this view the most. That's why I'm focusing on the cash flow. This is, as the finance committee and Clemens and I at a little staff, this is how we view, because it captures all items. So, one, going through this process, kind of blown away by how close we got to water. I remember sitting in the room with Dwight and Bill and kind of thinking about
Kathleen and Bill.
no, this is, yes.
We look alike.
Sorry.
We do.
You just spoke.
Leave your glasses around.
But, I remember Dwight said, because he said this was something that we didn't quite, we knew there was a rate increase of 3% and then expected usage as well, but there's so many variables that go into this, and kind of planted our flag in the ground, and he said under $10,000, it was quite remarkable. Property tax, the exact same variance, once again, the graph. We split property tax 50-50, as you guys know. On the expenditure side, not too far off on a number of accounts, the big one being engineering, and that really has to do with our water quality engineering.
It's the Castor, for example, and severely increased needs from the state, staff turnover, that really results in headaches for us.
Correct, and that's at the state level. So yes, once those folks turn over, different agendas pop up, and different questions pop up due to perhaps inexperience and just a learning curve. Operationally, so, we're in the positive, so good thing. Going back through, similar to the sewer side, we did not participate in as much capital expenditures as we had anticipated for various reasons. So I said that budget was greatly under, and that really leads to kind of the bottom line. We had anticipated $4,000 positive, and it ended up being closer to $650,000 for those reasons. Connections, once again, one more than anticipated. So the next page after that is the 2-year comparison to look at, once again, how we performed last year, and increases and decreases as they come with revenues and expenditures. Once again, after that, the next 3 or 4 pages are the detail for all accounts that we have in the district, and we conclude this with the look at reserves. And just looking at it again, said next year I want to provide a little more context with this, because we don't really show how we've either grown them or decreased it. That's really kind of on a monthly basis. You guys see that in the analysis provided to the board as far as what our cash position looks like on a monthly basis. But to state it quickly, not necessarily the best reserve position on the capital side for water, sewer side looking all right. Operationally, okay, relatively good on both sides. The water operating budget or water operating reserves are increasing monthly as far as their own dedicated account. So all in all, overall, relatively positive. I said once again, I'm not concerned with the financial status of the board on an ongoing basis, but to having the audit behind me, not just the validates that, but makes me feel better about it. But ongoing, of course, you guys see to that happening. So,
Well, 3 of the 5 of us will, and a couple are sitting on.
that's concerns.
Any questions for the board?
Yeah, just the one on page 3, the first page 3, where it says water engineering total expense of $187,000, which is $100,000 above budget. That one caught me off guard, so Clemens, can you explain that one more time, what that's all about?
That's what I just mentioned. So we saw the requirement to form a groundwater sustainability agency. That hit us in that fiscal year already.
Okay.
And we had to spend money initially. Right now, the bleeding is stopped, at least temporarily.
Okay.
We'll see how that continues. But that was some heavy lifting right up front. And what this then also is the state regulator has about every 2 years, they put a new staffer in place. And those are all young and ambitious engineers that tend to write long letters with demands that are not achievable. And we have to bring them to reality, and that requires a lot of negotiation and a lot of involvement. They're out here, usually an agency receives a field visit every 5 years. We've received field visits every year since I'm here. The reason seems to be, that's at least what we've been told, is that we receive state revolving funds. Other agencies receive state revolving funds and aren't as closely managed as we are. Maybe it has to do with the weather and the view that we provide, but they like to hang out here. And that is really something that there's a lot of work that the board does not see that goes into managing this. And it has, with the newest staffer now, it just doubles the amount of work.
Hopefully your turnover rate is gonna be low for the next 10 years, you get the same guy every 2 years.
Well,
The state turnover.
They have limited staff, but all these young engineers move on to they find better positions. So
Well, you know what's gonna happen to you, Clemens, every 10 years you're gonna look younger and younger and younger. They're gonna be the same age as your kids and your grandchildren, and then maybe your great-grandchildren if you're here long enough.
it won't stop bugging us. That's the problem.
Anyway, good work. Oh my goodness, the favorite part of the agenda. The review and possible action concerning adoptions of resolutions. Does this have a roll call vote too? Committing certain individuals for their outstanding services as board members. I guess you have to
Do these guys
actually.
have to recuse?
That's what it's gonna be.
Huge conflict of interest, you know. So Clemens, without any more modesty, I will turn this over to you.
Right, well, let me start actually with why we see this item on the agenda. We actually wanted to do this in January and seat the new board members, or swear the new board members in at this board meeting. We can't do that because we don't have the official county election results. I actually just got an email at 6 p.m. tonight that they're releasing them now. When we don't have them yet. So I guess in a couple of days we will see them come
They,
in.
by state law, had to be done by Monday, right?
Well, the board will adopt a resolution acknowledging the canvass and returns, and we don't have the official, the official transmittal would be attached to that resolution.
Right.
And that's what Clemens is referring to.
Right, so the new board members will be seated tomorrow at 7 p.m. And if there is any action before, the January meeting, then we'll do a flyby swearing.
Well, legally, you guys swore in and did your candidacy.
That's right.
So the legal, when you did your little thing at the time, until you were covered, fortunately.
So I believe they actually take office at 12 o'clock.
Tomorrow,
Yeah.
Right.
yes.
Yeah, I thought I heard you say 7, so it's
Or December 7th, I mean.
that makes sense.
Which is tomorrow.
So do they have to be here to swear in, or they have a?
No, we can handle that.
They
at the
actually
next
swore
board
in
meeting.
documents and you're actually sworn
Yes.
this morning.
So, and with
It's a day of
that,
infamy.
I'm sorry?
It's a day of infamy. No, they never said it is.
All right, so.
And with that, we're left to say goodbye to Bill Huber and Dwight Wilson. And we'd like to do that with resolutions expressing our gratitude for their years of service. So we prepared a resolution for Bill. And let me read what it says. Resolution of the Montara Water and Sanitary District expressing its gratitude and appreciation of Bill Huber for his years of service and dedication. Bill Huber was elected to the Montara Water and Sanitary District Board in November 2013, and during that time he was appointed to serve as treasurer. And during his tenure as treasurer, he served in continued endeavors to improve the coastside communities, demonstrating his outstanding community spirit, commitment to excellence and integrity. And whereas Bill Huber also served on the Standing Committee of Budget and Finance, Ad hoc Committee LEP, Ad hoc Committee Outreach, Ad hoc Committee Coastside County Water District, Ad hoc Committee Recycling Solid Waste, and Ad hoc Committee Recycling Water. So you guys see we've got plenty of committees that you guys can sit on tonight. Whereas in recognition of Director Huber's hard work and dedication, the MWSD is able to continue the initiatives implementing during his service for the past 5 years. Now therefore be resolved, this board hereby recommends that Bill Huber for his exemplary and dedicated leadership and service to the Montara Water and Sanitary District does hereby express its sincere gratitude and appreciation for his commitment to the coastal community. And very similar words for Dwight.
Yeah.
Some
You don't have
different
to go
committees
through
that you
that.
sat on and some different achievements, but, the staff recommendation is to approve the resolutions commending Bill and Dwight for their years of service.
So moved.
I will heartily second that. If I could, I'd just like to say, congratulations on 5 years of dedicated, hardworking public service. You have both been faithful and diligent in this work. And, I mean, we've had our frictions, but I always have the deepest respect for the people who show up and work. And you both brought passion and dedication. Both have expressed some really deep understanding of areas in which you really know stuff, and this board and this community has benefited from you bringing those things to the table. I took notes at various times on things that you were saying, because those were things I didn't know, and I walked away knowing more because of your work. And we've struggled to find solutions for things, and in the main we have done that. And I'm very pleased to find that over the course of the past 5 years, your work on this board has made this board better, and I want to say thank you. Appreciate that.
I will concur with that.
No, we had, at the beginning, it was kind of rough, but we had some rough goings, but we learned to work with each other, as you mentioned, Dwight, and to respect each other, and I think we became a very constructive group, and both of you had your own area of contribution, your own unique contribution to the district and to the board, and to how we run this, and to how the board operates. We appreciate that.
The one thing that's been a very pleasant surprise to me was how many times we had a vote and it was 5-0. It was actually, I think the vast majority of them were 5-0.
And, you know, some of the different points of view that you brought, we really had to wrestle with some ideas and knock it back and forth and see where we could land. And it is funny because I've heard people say, the Montara board has always been, of one mind, and it's just like, no, it's never been that way. And you guys maintain the tradition, and we got to tussle it out sometimes. But yeah, you're absolutely right.
The other thing is, it sort of spoiled me that I go up on the Moss Beach bluffs, and I used to be able to just look over the ocean and look at the mountains. Now I look and I see Airport 1, 3, 2, I see.
Is that why you had the bike accident? You weren't paying attention to the.
Could very well be.
Admiring the infrastructure.
That's it.
The,
Tripping over infrastructure.
Tripping over.
and the high point was the water diversion that Clemens showed me a couple months ago.
Oh, up on Montara too?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
And we got,
Is that all done now?
it's all done now.
It's literally the high point
This
too.
is gonna be the manager's report later. Thank you.
It's literally the high point of the district, isn't it?
I think the pump is,
No.
the pump
The
has
diversion?
higher at
Park
Alta
sites.
Vista, isn't it?
No. The diversion is the highest in the Alta Vista system,
Okay.
but the Portola tank is a tad bit higher than the Alta Vista tank.
Hmm.
So, but I,
Really?
yes, it's a tad bit higher than the Alta Vista tank.
It's easier to get to. That's fun.
Yes. So I think that's actually the highest point in the diversion
Yeah.
structure is just below that.
No, that's interesting you call that out, because that's, I think we've all learned to like look at manhole covers,
Mhm.
and they're not just round pieces of metal anymore. And,
No,
but
if
we,
they have holes in them, there's a problem.
but we do have
From
an
the
extraordinarily beautiful district. No, it's,
Every time I go to visit our friends Lisa and Jeff, I see that patrol number 3, and I'm going, well, let's see, what was the production that last month?
Yes, time to.
And I keep that opinion to myself, and I never say a word to Kelly about that.
Yeah, that's probably just as well, Jim, with Bill. All right, well, thank you guys, it's been a real pleasure.
we have to vote.
Do they have to vote?
Did we vote?
No.
No, we need a roll call.
I tried to
vote.
pass
We need a
this
roll
one
call.
through. All right, and,
I
go ahead.
I
Go
can't
Jim.
recuse myself on this one.
Modesty should not prevent a vote. Let's have it by acclamation, all members voted.
Okay.
Okay.
Aye.
That works for me.
Yeah.
Did you want to say anything? Oh, okay.
I did.
Oh, you did, okay. Okay, I think we're good, do we actually have to have a roll call vote for this?
Oh, no.
No,
we just did it.
acclamation.
Acclamation.
He just said
great.
no.
Great, fair enough.
So, the resolution says the district clerk is hereby authorized and directed to transmit a copy of the resolution to Dwight and Bill, so Tracy?
I thought there was a bonus check, I was.
This is it. It's worth the paper it's printed on. And the ink,
And the ink,
and the tone.
and the top. All right, you all, thank you so much. All right, new business item number 4, review possible action concerning cancellation of next regular scheduled meetings of both December 20th of 2018 and January 3rd of 2019. Pretty self-explanatory, Clemens, anything new beyond that?
All right, yeah, it's pretty clear, there's no business that we can foresee, for these 2 meetings, they're too close to the holidays. We recommend to, move all business to the January 17 meeting.
Okay,
I would
Yes,
like
sir.
to have the officer, I would like to swear our new members in on the 20th and select officers and the committee. It doesn't need to be a long meeting, but 6 weeks without a meeting has me a little nervous.
I'll leave it up to you.
I am not in town on the 20th.
Oh,
You may be gone as well.
yeah, okay.
Okay. I have a hunch that unless there's a burning desire that these guys can wait for the
Yeah,
starting.
they can wait.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so I'm glad to know that as of tomorrow, you're.
Yeah, question for you.
Okay,
Oh, I'm sorry,
I'm
sir.
glad to know that as of tomorrow, you guys are like actually on the
Official.
clock, so that's good.
Yeah, yeah, go ahead.
And on January, there will be an actual swearing in.
Yes.
We'll have the swearing in.
Yes,
Great
there will
family,
be
it's
a
really neat.
confirmation of the election results and the swearing in.
I do have a question for you, but first I gotta introduce it with a little bit of thought, especially because of what's been going on just now. I served on the board for 8 years,
I've been attending most of the meetings the last 31 years.
Sure.
And I never got a resolution. I'm just saying, I never got one.
Clemens wasn't manager then, so.
I wasn't pointing out.
Well, now we have an agenda item under new business for January.
I was appointed to the board, yeah, I won the election, I came to the board meeting on that first night in December, and I don't remember the exact date, but I don't think it was, I think it was before the 7th, and I was seated. And at that meeting, the water people came, and I said, what can we do? Why do you come to us? We're the sewer district. and I think it was Gary, or Hafton, came up and said, oh, well, you can get this law. You get the resolutions passed so that you can have water authority. And so I took that as, go with it. Much over the president's wishes, the president of the board wasn't there at the next staff meeting, and we had made contact with Clinton Kopp's office, and they needed to have something in writing right away. And we sat down and got something in writing right away, and the board approved it. And that started 4 years of going up to the hearings. But
In Sacramento.
right, but the president of the board, when he found out what was going on, he was very upset with me. And I think for the first 4 or 5 months, neither Joan nor I were allowed to get beyond into the office, and we were not allowed to even have a copy of the ordinance. So you guys have gone a long way in that time, the ordinances. And so, but what I wanted to say, or the question I have for you, in the introduction to that, is what I was going to say. I have a friend who I met first day in kindergarten. Went all the way through grade school with him. We went our different ways. And every year since then, we've exchanged birthday cards. He was born 12 days before myself. And I went looking for a card a couple weeks ago, and I couldn't find one that was just right. So I said, well, I'll just go with the 80s. With the card, they give you the date of, the year that for a 4-year-old, 3-year-old, and you got one for 60, and you got one for 80. So I said, well, I'll get one of those. And then suddenly dawned on me, I've been exchanging cards with him for 60 years or more. I must be old. It finally dawned on me. And so this may be the fact that I didn't read this right, but last week I got a flyer from this district advertising the fact that rates with the seacoast are going to go up, or the college, excuse me, the college are going to go up as of the 1st of January, which I already knew from attending board meetings, but I got this flyer. That same page, first page, it says the protest hearing is the 17th of January. Don't we have something before the cart before the horse?
Ooh.
And maybe that requires a new bulletin to go out immediately.
Given the schedule, yes.
Right. Anyway, that was the point I was trying to get.
Well, Lou, something I would love to do is sit down with you with a tape recorder and get the history of this district, because you have done more and paid more attention to this than I think any single person in the community, and this is a very special district, and it's a district that is driven by the impudence that you displayed on the water, and that we carried through to become a water district, and so I actually, even in the formation of the district, it was formed the same year as Pacifica, much to my surprise.
When that happened, the 4th meeting before the legislative body, we were actually sitting down waiting for them to ask the first questions. And somebody in the courtroom side of the door motions to Clinton to come here. And so he goes in there, and he comes back and he
looks to me, because I was the only one from the district there, and he says, the county's given up. No, let you go ahead with this initiative if you agree to pay them for what they've expended in trying to set up their own district to buy out citizens. And I didn't have the authority, I said yes.
So you're the reason that I had to go deliver that check to the supervisors all those years later?
And that question, oh yeah. I mean,
It's all your fault,
We
Lou.
said yes, and then immediately within a few months later, they came out with a bill for what they had authorized rather than what they had actually expended.
That's our
And
county.
I screamed, and they reduced it down to what they had actually paid for setting up another district that they were planning on.
I think just as a matter of interest, I don't think we paid interest on that amount. So maybe we came out a little further ahead than we thought.
And then what was so interesting is that the county had a lobbyist there to lobby against us.
Hmm.
He had not been told, and he didn't know what to do. There is a lady on the legislative board there, and I'm 99% sure it was Maxine Waters. And she had not been told, and she was sure that we were trying to keep the house prices no lower than moderate income housing, in other words, blocking the project, which still hasn't been built. And of course, she was completely flabbergasted by the fact that the county had given in and the hearing was over.
Well, thank you so much. And I
Fair
like
on
it.
this time, fair on this time.
Fair on this, yeah.
Claiming my time.
Yeah. So Catherine, you should follow up on the tape. It's a great
Yes,
idea.
yes.
All right, committee reports. Now, Scott, just try to keep this tight. My last meeting, I want to be out by a reasonable time.
Well, we did a lot of ordinary business with Sam, mostly closed session. We extended the attorney's contract, which is a small miracle, and I'm grateful for that. Closed session was really long, so we postponed most everything else. We also adopted a resolution commending Leonard Warren for his years of service on SAM. So maybe the retirement of the longest-serving public elected official on the coast side, I think.
When you count, because he was on SAM for 21 years, GSD, GCSD for 21 years, and MCC for 8.
Wow.
Rumor has it was the marriage that got him out of public service.
He found that there were other things that were interesting in life, and Leonard is as happy as I've ever seen him. So
Yes.
we had a very warm send off for Leonard. On Saturday we had a strategic plan gathering, quite well attended. We were sorry that you weren't feeling well. It would have been good, but we did of the managers we did have the new city manager from Half Moon Bay. He came and participated a little bit. I think the kind of upshot of what we came out of there with, we didn't come out with a lot, but we did start to pencil in details on what we want to see in terms of a plan for the steps to get us to the budget in the coming year, to try to serve as a template of how we can take things with Sam advancing the agenda of getting things done and finding the right points of interaction with the stakeholders, the managers, the agencies, the board. And so a lot of that where we've had it in various forms, but we've never really tried to lay out, here's the template for that interaction. We've had things written in the JPA about, how do you approve the budget? We know that because we've done it for so long, you've got to get it into certain shape at SAM, then SAM's got to vote, and then it comes back out to the member agencies, and then it goes back to SAM, and sometimes it ping-pongs back and forth a couple of times. And we decided we've had so much disagreement amongst the board and some of the board with the staff that why don't we just write that down? If we can get agreement on that, maybe we can stop having surprises. And one of the things, and this was very interesting, I thought, that everybody kind of agreed, look, if we know that this is the point at which we have the opportunity for my role, whatever my role is, for my role to come in and weigh in with comments or to weigh in with approval, if I miss that opportunity, I missed my opportunity, and I don't get to try to claw it back.
No do-overs.
Yeah, so it's like, you know, if we're on the budget, if we actually start the budget process in October, by the time we get to late April, that thing should be locked and loaded and on a rocket sled out the door to get approval. We haven't seen or enjoyed that kind of clarity in the process. Maybe this time, if we actually get all the stuff written down. So we're gonna revisit that, try to get some more detail into that as a way to let everybody know, here's the points of interaction, here's the points of approval, here's who has approval and who has advisory. Just write it all down. Because having been at that board table for so long, it's like, there's a lot of opinions, and they're not all right. But if we write it down and agree on what we've written down, then we'll have agreement, and then that'll be the way we'll try to do it.
That was something that all of the interviewees were unanimous on when Martin was doing the pre-strategic plan interviews, was the need for a more defined structure.
Yeah, so it may not sound like a lot, but honestly, that's where, when you add them all up, so many of the points of friction have been places where I didn't get my say, or things like that. And it's like, fine, we can put it down, we're gonna put it on a calendar, and then we'll all know, and then we can operate according to that. If we need to make adjustments, we know what we're adjusting. So, clarity in the process.
Great. Midcoast Council?
Nothing to report. Oh, wait, no, I do, I'm sorry. Lisa Ketchum, who has been on the Midcoast Council for going on 8 years.
8 years.
Yep, she's been there 2 terms, was just appointed to the Planning Commission for San Mateo County. So she is resigning from the Midcoast Community Council, so if folks are interested, there will be an appointed vacancy. The general process is to be interviewed by the Midcoast Council, but the actual appointing agency is the Board of Supervisors. So you will then, it would be advised to talk to the Board of Supervisors.
That's our loss and our gain.
It's our loss and our gain. Lisa has done a phenomenal job in her research, her documentation, her even-handedness on things, and so it's, as Scott says, it's our loss and frankly the whole county's gain.
Yeah, that's great.
CSTA?
Nothing to report.
Attorney's report, Dave?
Just to mention that the Aqua Legal Services Committee remains active. I have an 8:30 a.m. meeting by phone next Monday on a request for support in some litigation. I haven't had a chance to even look at what the request is because it just came in today.
All right, exciting. You ought to drive. Where's the meeting?
In his office.
No, I said, you don't want to drive to the meeting? No. Oh, okay. Director's report, anybody?
I do have a question, Bill. What about the CCWD committee? Do we have any?
Nothing to report.
One last report? Okay.
I think that's dropped off for the reasons that he said, nothing to report, what, for 5 years?
Well, one of
Figured
the,
last hurrah.
Well, I think we
one
had
of
2
the,
reports.
yeah, somebody else can go on that, but one of the strong interests at the SIM strategic plan was reviving recycled water and starting with the recycled water CCWD committee meetings. So.
Oh, well, hopefully it'll be done before Jim and I are actually inside the ground where the recycling water is coming from. Yeah.
Enriching the water.
Yes. Clements?
Yes, so, we made a presentation some time ago, about our diversion structure, and, we had, the access to the diversion structure is traditionally very difficult. It's literally it was a climb through the creek, meaning a rope climb through the creek up to the diversion box. So something that we couldn't show OSHA really, but we depended on it. And at one point, that was last year, we actually got the permit with the feds to do the project. And we were very proud. This was an in-house project that would have been extremely expensive to undertake if it wasn't done in-house. I think we spent a total of $15,000 or so on the purchase of a couple of bridges. We worked with some folks together that were building trails, Yosemite trails, etc., that made some recommendations on how to achieve this. And so we purchased these bridges, hauled them up, which is quite an undertaking, and replaced and actually put them there. And Bill saw now the bridges, and it's a relatively easy access now. Still some climb, and we reported about this. What was still missing on the project was the actual diversion box. The diversion box, I estimate it's about 60, 70 years old. It's redwood, and it rotted away and wasn't usable anymore. And our guys now designed and built and implemented a new diversion box, and it's quite a structure. They went away from the traditional weir board and instead implemented a modern screen that's on an incline, where the creek runs on an incline and disappears through the screen, and at the same time pushes all the debris that's filtered out away.
Nice.
So it's a wonderful design and a wonderful box that is made out of NSF 61, drinking water approved materials, and it was still done under the same permit. So for relatively cheap, I mean, we're talking about a couple of $1,000 of material, and just a lot of thinking and hard work, we were able to replace this box. And I mean, again, this would have been a project in the hundreds of thousands of dollars if this would have been done through contractors. So it really saved us tremendous amount.
Does it self-clean?
It's self-cleaning.
It works.
It works.
Perfect.
Yeah, it was a big question, surprise, does it work? And we now run it since over a month and see it in action, and it's working flawlessly.
This should be great.
We should get a video and we can show it to the public. Just a 45-second video.
Yes.
Just to
Let's put it on YouTube.
I
Yeah.
got one on my phone. Yes. I definitely gonna prepare something like this for next week.
Great.
It's a great show and tell.
Good. Anything else?
That's it.
There are cookies out. I decided not to get a cake, but I did think that perhaps cookies would be.
Cookies is actually the first food group. So let's take about a 10-minute break. And we're done with the camera. So we're going to go into closed session, and we have to report in.